The balance on my screen read 847, not 195,008 like someone had taken a pair of scissors to 5 years of my life and cut out everything except the loose change. I refreshed the page. Still $840. I opened the transaction history and sat there in the dark kitchen at 6:14 in the morning, reading the same 3 lines over and over. Transfer. Transfer. Each one stamped across 10 days in April, while I was traveling for work, while I was calling home every night to ask how things were going, while I was eating airport sandwiches and telling myself we were almost there, almost close enough to make an offer on the house we'd been circling for 2 years. I called my sister before I called the bank. I don't know why. Maybe because I already knew what the bank would tell me, and I needed to hear a voice that wasn't going to give me a case number and reference code. She picked up on the second ring. It was barely past 6. Winona, I said, the house fund. I know, she said, and she wasn't whispering. She was wide awake, and her voice was steady in a way that made the hair on my arms stand up. I've been up since 4. Sit tight. I'll be there in an hour. She didn't ask what happened. She didn't gasp. She just said she'd be there, and the line went quiet, and I stood in my own kitchen looking at $847 and wondering what exactly my 22-year-old sister knew that I didn't. My name isn't the point. What matters is that I was 31, married 6 years, and I had spent every one of those years believing that the one thing my wife Gemma and I had built together, the one thing that was solid and real and ours, was that savings account, the house fund, $195,000. We'd started it the year we got married, $200 a month that turned into $400, then more when I got promoted, then more when she started pulling real commissions at the interior design firm where she worked. We talked about it, the way some couples talk about having kids. We had a folder on the fridge with printed listing. We'd driven past a gray Craftsman on Alderton Road 17 times, slow enough that the neighbors probably thought we were casing it. We'd named the yard. Gemma wanted raised garden beds along the south fence. I'd already priced the lumber. I called the bank at 6:30. The agent was polite and final. 3 wire transfers had been initiated from the joint account by the secondary account holder, my wife, over a period of 10 days. All 3 cleared. The destination was an account registered to something called Ashworth Meridian Ventures LLC. She had used her own login, her own credentials, her own authorization. Everything was legal on paper. Legal on paper, I repeated that phrase until it stopped making sound. By the time Winona knocked on the front door, I'd gone through half a pot of coffee and hadn't tasted any of it. She came in with her backpack slung over one shoulder and her laptop already in her hand, and she looked at me the way you look at someone standing in the middle of a fire who hasn't started running yet. "Where's Gemma?" she asked. I didn't know. Her side of the bed had been empty when I woke up. Her car was gone. Her phone went straight to voicemail. I'd checked it 4 times. Winona nodded once, like this confirmed something she'd already accounted for. "Sit down," she said. "I need to show you everything." She started 3 months ago, she told me. Not with suspicion exactly, more like a feeling she couldn't set down. It was a Sunday in January. She'd come over to use my printer for a graduate school application. Gemma was out at what she called a client walkthrough, and I was at the gym. Winona sat at my desk, opened the browser, and clicked on the email tab by mistake instead of the printer queue. The inbox loaded. The most recent message sat at the top with a subject line that read, "Can't stop thinking about last night. You're going to ruin me." She closed it immediately. She told me she sat in that chair for 10 minutes trying to decide what to do, then printed her application and went home without saying anything. Not because she didn't care, she said, because she knew that telling me without proof would hurt me twice. Once with the suspicion, and a second time when I convinced myself it was nothing, the way people do when the alternative is unbearable. So instead, she paid attention. She flipped open her laptop on my kitchen table and turned it toward me. She had a document, 63 pages, organized by date, category, and source. She'd noted every late night Gemma mentioned a site visit. She'd tracked the name that kept surfacing in those explanations. Doyle Ashworth, a client, Gemma had said. A developer. Very successful. They were redesigning the lobby of his new mixed-use property in the Pearl District. I looked him up, Winona said. She pulled up a LinkedIn profile. Doyle Ashworth, 48 years old. Portland-based real estate developer. 41 connections. The profile photo showed a man in a sport coat who looked like he'd practiced his smile until it stopped looking practiced. The mixed-use property he supposedly hired Gemma to design, she said. Clicking to the next tab, doesn't exist. She showed me a city permit search, no filings, no address, no project on record. Ashworth Meridian Ventures LLC was registered in Delaware 8 months ago. The mailing address is a mailbox rental in Beaverton. The registered agent is a mail service, not a law firm. She paused. They never build anything. They raise capital and move it somewhere else. I stared at the screen, so Gemma was helping him. Her voice didn't shift. She wasn't just in a relationship with him. She was using her position at the firm, her access to high net worth clients, to steer people toward his investment opportunity. I found 3 of her firm's clients who transferred money into Ashworth Meridian over the last 8 months. 50,000 here, 80,000 there. She clicked to another tab. Your house fund was the 4th. The refrigerator hummed behind me. Outside, a car moved through the wet street. There's more, she said. She looked at me steadily. I found a property attorney in Seattle named Suzanne who filed a complaint 6 weeks ago against a developer matching Doyle's description. Different LLC name, but identical structure. She thought she was alone in this. She didn't know about Gemma, and she didn't know about a third woman in Bend who wired him $60,000 last fall. She let that sit. He's running the same scheme on all of them simultaneously. Gemma thinks she's the only one. That's how the leverage works. Everyone believes they're special, which means everyone stays quiet. I leaned back hard, the chair complained. Why didn't you tell me sooner? She looked at me with the particular patience that takes practice to develop. Because I didn't have enough yet, and because confronting her too early meant the money would disappear before we could do anything about it. She tapped the edge of the laptop. I needed the whole map first. She had it now. She walked me through the rest. On Gemma's shared calendar, still synced to my phone because neither of us had thought to undo it, Winona had spotted a recurring block labeled DCA strategy call every Tuesday at 7 p.m. that wasn't a strategy call at all. She'd cross-referenced timestamps from Gemma's phone, location data occasionally bleeding through into photo metadata, against charges on our joint credit card. Crane Hollow Restaurant, Alderton Bistro. The Meridian Club, which shared a name with the LLC in a way that was either coincidence or the kind of private joke that tells you everything about someone's character. In the shared email account we used for household bills, the one I never checked because Gemma managed it, Winona had found 3 forwarded documents. Investment pitch decks for Ashworth Meridian Ventures, sent to addresses she didn't recognize. She'd reverse searched 2 of them. Both led to social profiles of women who were clients of the design firm. Both accounts had gone quiet in the last few months. The way people go quiet when something has gone wrong and they don't know who to trust. I reached out to Suzanne 2 weeks ago, Winona said, anonymously. I told her I had documentation of a pattern and asked if she'd be willing to coordinate. She pulled up a thread. She wrote back in 6 hours. She already had an attorney. She was waiting for someone else to come forward. I looked at my sister for a long moment. At this 22-year-old finishing her accounting degree on a scholarship she'd earned herself, who had spent 3 months quietly assembling this architecture of evidence while I was flying back into job sites and coming home to a wife who kissed my cheek and asked how the food was in Denver. I didn't have words for what I felt, something between gratitude and grief, too large for the room. Okay, I said, what do we do now? She almost smiled. I was hoping you'd ask that. She called it Operation Clean Break. Practical name, she said. No theatrics. 3 fronts. All had to move at the same time or none of it would hold. The first was the firm. Winona had documented every client solicitation, every forwarded pitch deck, every email Gemma had sent from her work account to steer clients toward Ashworth Meridian. Using firm resources and client relationships for personal financial gain was a clear breach of the fiduciary standards in Gemma's employment contract. Winona had read the whole thing, found a copy in our shared files from when Gemma had asked me to review it 3 years ago. On Monday morning, an anonymous package would go to the firm's managing partner. Every page. The second front was Suzanne. Winona had already laid the groundwork. When she sent the full documentation, all 63 pages, Suzanne's legal team would have enough to file an emergency motion to freeze Ashworth Meridian Ventures' accounts in Multnomah County. Every account, including the one holding our money. Once it's frozen, Winona said, nothing moves. And because the original transfer was made under fraudulent pretenses, a financial attorney can pursue it as fraudulent conveyance and seek reversal. She slid a handwritten name across the table. Her accounting professor. 12 years in financial fraud litigation before he started teaching. He'd agreed to take a call Monday morning. The third front was the account itself. Last fall, when I'd been traveling for an extended stretch, I'd added Winona as an authorized user so she could help me flag billing issues. We'd never thought about it since, but it meant she had standing to monitor in real time and block any additional transfers the moment they initiated. She took everything she was going to take, I said. Probably, she said, but we're not leaving the door unlocked. I looked at the name on the paper, then at my sister, then at 63 pages built out of nothing but patience and a borrowed printer. She forgot you existed, I said. Winona closed her laptop. That was her first mistake. Monday arrived gray and still, the kind of Portland morning where the clouds sit so low you can almost feel their weight. I drove to work like any other day, hands on the wheel, radio off. Winona was executing the plan from her apartment, and we'd agreed I should be visible and normal, give Gemma no reason to accelerate anything if she happened to check in. At 9:15, Winona sent the documentation package to the firm's managing partner. By 10:30, it had been forwarded to HR and outside legal counsel. At noon, I got a text from a number I didn't recognize, Gemma's manager asking if I was available to speak. I told him I was consulting with an attorney. I was. At 11, Winona sent the full 63 pages to Suzanne's team in Seattle. At 12:47, Suzanne's attorney filed the emergency motion to freeze Ashworth Meridian's assets. The judge signed it at 2:10 p.m. At 2:35, I was on the phone with Winona's professor. He'd already reviewed the transfer history. Textbook, he said. The funds are frozen, not spent. That's almost as good as a recovery. He'd have a demand letter out by end of day. At 3:47, Winona texted me 2 words, it's moving. The reversal had initiated. Not complete. These things take days, but the mechanism was running. The money had nowhere left to go. At 4, Gemma was called into the firm. By 4:30, she'd been placed on administrative suspension. At 5:15, Doyle Ashworth tried to access his accounts and found them frozen solid. At 11:07 p.m., my phone rang. I answered without speaking. On the other end came the specific quality of silence that means someone is trying to control their breathing and failing at it. Then her voice, cracked at the edges, stripped down to something I barely recognized. The accounts are frozen, she said. The firm called me. My phone won't stop. Doyle isn't picking up. He's gone. I can't reach him, and the money. I heard Winona set down her glass across the table and lean forward. I put the call on speaker. Hi. Winona's voice was level as a surveyor's line. Suzanne's legal team has filed a civil complaint naming you as a secondary party to a securities fraud scheme. You have until Wednesday morning to retain your own counsel before the complaint is finalized. Silence. Then you're the one who... No, I said. The first word I'd spoken. You did this. You did this every week for 5 years while I thought we were building something. You made that choice, not me. The line held for a long moment, then a sound that wasn't quite crying. I'm coming home, she said. I know, I said. She arrived at 1:19 a.m., headlights sweeping across the wet driveway. She stood on the porch in a jacket too thin for the rain, no bags, just her phone and a look I'd never seen before. Something compressed, something that had run out of room. I let her in, old habit. She stood in the kitchen, looking at the laptop on the table. Her eyes moved over it the way someone reads a verdict. You're going to give it back, she said, not a question. The reversal is already processing, I said. Your attorney can confirm with the registered agent. She laughed once, short and hollow. He told me it was real. He said the Portland project was 6 months from breaking ground. He said he was done with the other investors. She looked at the window. He lied to me the same way I... She stopped. I waited. I wanted something that was just mine, she said quietly. We'd been drifting for 2 years and you wouldn't see it. I would have listened, I said. I couldn't be robbed. Winona slid the manila envelope to the center of the table without a word. Divorce agreement, division of remaining joint assets, non-disparagement both sides, a cooperation clause requiring her full and truthful testimony in the civil proceedings against Doyle Ashworth, in exchange for secondary rather than primary defendant status. Her attorney had already been contacted. Everything was documented. She read it standing up, moving through each page the way you move through something you know you have to finish. When she reached the signature line, her hand hesitated for one breath. Then she signed. The ink pressed too hard. She pushed the papers back and stood without looking at me. At the door, she paused. "Tell me you don't hate me," she said, to the room, to no one in particular. No one answered. The rain kept going. The door latch clicked behind her, and that sound, small and final and ordinary, was the sound of 6 years closing. 4 months later, I own a house. Not the gray Craftsman on Alderton Road. That one sold to someone else while I was rebuilding. The one I bought is smaller, a bungalow on a quieter street, with a good yard and a kitchen that gets light in the morning from an angle that makes everything look worth keeping. I signed the papers on a Tuesday. The loan officer shook my hand. I drove home and sat in an empty room and felt something I didn't have a name for at first. Then I recognized it. It was mine, completely and unambiguously mine. Winona graduated in May. She accepted a position at a financial investigations firm before the ceremony even happened. Her professor wrote her the kind of recommendation that doesn't leave room for doubt. She moved to Seattle, which felt like its own kind of justice, given that Suzanne was there, and the two of them had coffee her first week in the city. She sent me a photo, 2 women I respected, sharing a corner table. Sometimes that's how things end up. Doyle Ashworth was arrested in Nevada in late spring. He faced civil suits from 4 women, a 4th had surfaced during discovery, and a criminal referral from the State Financial Crimes Unit. The recovery took 11 days total. $193,000 came back. We considered the $2,000 the cost of the lesson. Gemma cooperated fully and testified. Her attorney kept her to a civil liability and a 2-year industry ban. She left Portland. I don't know where she went. I didn't ask. 3 months after the papers were filed, a text came from her number. "I hope the house is what you wanted." I read it twice, then archived it. Some things don't need a reply. I have a porch now. I drink my coffee out there most mornings and watch the street wake up. The neighbor's dog has decided I'm worth greeting. The light comes in at the right angle. The raised garden beds are still unmade along the south fence. I haven't gotten to them yet, but the posts are in the ground, and that's a start. I think about the version of me who sat at a kitchen table at 6:14 in the morning and hit refresh 3 times, hoping a number would change. I think about my sister awake since 4, building 63 pages out of patience and a printer she borrowed without asking. I think about how easy it is to assume that protection comes from the people closest to you, and how sometimes it comes from the direction you never thought to look. Justice doesn't announce itself. It doesn't wear a robe. Sometimes it shows up at your front door before sunrise with a backpack and a laptop and a calm that should not be possible in someone that young, and it just says, "Sit tight. I'll be there in an hour." And then it is.